Um, First of all, thank you. Thank you for coming over to Israel. And most importantly, thank you for being our friend. Sometimes we feel a bit alone, and knowing that there's friends that care for Israel and believe in Israel makes a huge difference for us. The big question is, why are you meeting politicians when you're in Israel and you can have fun and go see? So I'm sure you've heard everything on politics. I'll just tell you my story and keep as much time open for questions. But in a sense, my personal story reflects a lot of what's going on in Israel. So I was born and grew up here in Israel. Both my parents were born and grew up in San Francisco. They made Aliyah to Israel after the Six-Day War. They were very secular, very far away from even Judaism, but something during the weeks prior to the war, when there was a sense that this new little state, Jewish state, is about to be annihilated, suddenly they became obsessed with a country they've never been to and never thought about. And when Israel defeated its enemies, they came, volunteered in a kibbutz, and stayed on. And I grew up here in the 80s, and your typical Israeli who grew up in the 80s, who came to age in the 80s, we sort of knew that wars were an issue of the past. Because the background was the peace with Egypt, and sort of we understood, okay, we're a normal country and it's looking good. Israel's existence is no longer a threat, and we had a very similar childhood to any American kid. The same fast food, the same TV shows. And I served in the military as a commander in a special commando unit. And then after the army, studied here in Jerusalem. And then, like many others in this country, I founded a startup company with 3 more talented friends than I. And after 6 years of utter failure, we did succeed ultimately, I lived in America for 5 years running this high-tech company. All of you are probably customers. Whenever you log on to your online banking website, whether it's Bank of America, Chase, Barclays, it's our software, still to this very day, that makes sure that you are you and not a fraudster who's stolen your password. So it goes through Israeli servers. In fact, 7 out of 10 North American and West Europe transactions and Japanese transactions go through this company's servers to this very day. And then we sold the company, what's called an exit, for about $150 million. And that's, I know I was also excited, so I see the lights are turning off. And that's sort of a wow moment, because I was I don't know how the word in English, tafran, does anyone know, sort of living broke for many years, and suddenly you become a multimillionaire. So you're supposed to be in Acapulco, drinking one of those cocktails with an umbrella, but then the Second Lebanon War started. And I was called in, like many others, to defend my country, to defend my family. And that was the inflection point in my life, because I was a very happy camper in the high-tech. But what happened to me, and I think to many others in Israel of my age, is I suddenly realized, whoa, we can't take Israel's existence for granted. There's some bad guys out there that want to kill us. Now, it sounds almost obvious to say this now in 2018 when we see everything going on, but the atmosphere in the 80s and 90s was wars are something of the past. We're normal. And we hope to be normal. And we still desire to have And I found myself, I was commanding a search and destroy mission to pinpoint rocket launchers in behind enemy lines. And, just a week before I became a very wealthy, and suddenly I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I said, what's going on here? Why do these guys want to kill us? We're not holding any part of Lebanon. We pulled out of Lebanon back in 2000. Why are they, for heaven's sake, why are these guys shooting thousands of missiles to my parents' home in Haifa? And it dawned on me, and again, it's so obvious to me now, but it dawned on me that whatever we do, they want to annihilate the Jewish people. And they're very talented and very dedicated. So when I came out of the Second Lebanon War, I decided to leave the wonderful world of startups and high-tech, which really is my passion and still is my passion, and go work for the country. I joined Prime Minister, then opposition leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, as his chief of staff. I very much admired him. I still do. We have our differences. But nevertheless, I thought back then, he ought to be prime minister, and worked hard to help him become prime minister. And I'm happy he did. And I had another stint in another high-tech company, but that's effectively what brought me into politics. And then I decided to enter politics myself, not as a chief of staff, but so sort of there was a national religious party, these guys. All right, here's how it works in Israel. Hold on. We Jews are complex. So we've got secular, we've got Haredim, the folks that wear black, and they believe in the Torah, but don't think or do not believe in the importance of the state of Israel as a state. And then the knitted yarmulkes are those who believe in the Torah, but also believe in Zionism and the state. But then you've got a black knitted yarmulke, a small knitted yarmulke, a big one. There's all these varieties. Anyway, this party had been sort of the, I'd say, lobby party for the religious for many, many years. And in the 50s and 60s, the religious were a feeble, small community that needed someone to lobby for them. But this party was disappearing. It had 12 seats, went down to 9 seats, 6, 3, and it was going to disappear. I said, no, we need to change the mission of this party. We're no longer a lobby party for the religious. We don't need a lobby party. If I can run a high-tech company and I can command a company in behind enemy lines, we don't need a lobbyist. We want to change Israel. We want to strengthen Israel. We want to embed Israel with strong Zionist Jewish values and restore who we are. And we open up the party for non-religious also. So I brought in a very talented young woman. Her name is לשכת. And not only is she a woman she's secular, right? So twice. What happened was she was elected number 1 in the primaries for the members. So that's how. So open up the party and change the mission and call it the Jewish Home. And it was a staggering success. We became the 3rd largest party in government. We still are today the 3rd largest party of government. We are right-wing in the sense that I vehemently oppose handing over any more Jewish land to Arabs, period. And since we entered the political realm, I would say all of Israel is moving rightward. But it's not because of us, it's because of this small thing called reality. You see, what happened was the majority of Israelis, but a slight majority, would have supported land for peace. But my generation is much more realistic. We grew up on songs of peace called Shir LaShalom and Noladti, I'm Born for Peace. All these, those are songs I still sing to my kids because it goes well on guitar, and I'm a pretty poor guitar player. So we want peace, but desire doesn't make things, you can't want yourself through, I can want this cup to fly up. It doesn't happen because there is gravity. And we're realistic. Our neighbors, our environment is probably the toughest environment on the globe. In the north, we have Hezbollah with 130,000 rockets today targeted towards our communities. In the Golan Heights, we've got Iran who's trying to pave its way to the border. On the south, in the Sinai, we have Daesh, ISIS, who just this week shot a rocket into Israel. And then in Gaza, we have Hamas. It doesn't get worse, but we're good. We're good. We're strong. And we will prevail. As long as we're strong internally, we'll prevail. And therefore, as Minister of Education, instilling Zionist values, instilling patriotism, instilling the importance of democracy, Judaism, all of this together is a central goal, hand in hand with excellence, especially in math and English. If you ask any Israeli, they'll tell you Bennett is the mathematics guy because I'm pounding science and math for everyone. Now, as Minister of Education, and with this I'll wrap it up, I've got a few goals, but there's two specific populations in Israel that we have to help ignite forward, because Israel is a startup nation. Just let me give you a stat that will blow you away. In Israel, last year, there was $6 billion worth of startup investments in Israeli startups. $6 billion, that's the equivalent of Western Europe combined. So the high-tech environment that I'd worked in twice, I sold 2 companies, was amazing. Now it's a whole order of magnitude better. Yet, there's 2 populations that are left behind. One is the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, because they do not have the core curriculum. And my approach is, everyone, the mainstream of Israel feels that Haredim should serve in the army and should work. Everyone, my approach is slightly different. I think those Haredim who are willing to learn Torah from morning to night should, but that's about 5%, 10%. We need that. 90% should go out and work. Now, should they be serving in the army? Yes. But how do we get there? By not fighting them, but by allowing them, giving them good tools, especially math, science, and English, to go get good jobs, and ultimately they'll work. Not fight them, but help them. The second population is the Arab population. We have about 1.8 million Israeli Arabs who enjoy full equal rights in Israel, but they're way behind. And as Minister of Education and in my previous role as Minister of Economy, my big goal was to help them into Israeli society. We need them to work. We need them to thrive. There are not many Arabs in the high-tech sector, and that's a shame because we've almost exhausted our internal talent. These are 2 goals. I know I'm considered nits, hawk. I am a hawk on, vis-a-vis the region. But domestically, I think that we need to strengthen these communities. And I'm optimistic. The bottom line of Israel, right now, if Israel were a share, I'd buy. Israel's on the rise, really on all. And this will summarize it, and then I'll take, if there's a few minutes, take questions. economically growing, employment low. One big problem is socioeconomic gaps big. It's my job to give a fair opportunity for the kids down here. That's my job, and I'm on it. Next, high-tech is booming. Our cyber capabilities are remarkable, remarkable. By the time you exit, I'm going to have all your information from the... I'm kidding. And our diplomatic position, it's always been tough. I think it's getting better because people understand that the Mediterranean, the Middle East is not Palestinian-Israeli conflict centered, but the story's different. There's a bunch of radical Islamists who want to take over the world and want to start building a radical Islamic Shiite empire from Tehran through Iraq, Syria, to the Mediterranean. And they wake up in the morning and they say, how do we do this? How do we build this Shiite crescent? And we got to stop it, because it won't stop there. When they don't need to develop missiles to hit Israel. Their missiles today can hit Israel. So the intercontinental ballistic missiles, they're not for Israel, for Europe and America. Now, one last distinction, North Korea versus Iran. North Korea has a certain nuclear arsenal, not huge. And North Korea is not a very powerful nation. Iran is huge. And it's based on, by the way, an amazing, great nation of Persians, which we, if only the regime would walk away, we'd have an amazing relationship with an ancient nation. But these guys are strong. And the very last point I want to make is the current deal that now President Trump announced that he's not certifying is bad in the following sense. It's a fool's paradise. It gives you a false sense of security because everyone says they're not enriching uranium. So I just want to leave you with this analogy. There's building a nuclear weapon manually, imagine, before the Industrial Revolution, and then there's building a huge machine that can produce dozens and dozens of nuclear weapons. Iran's goal is not to acquire a nuclear weapon. Their goal right now is, within the box of this agreement, to build a huge factory, if you will, that the moment you press the button, it'll produce very quickly an arsenal of dozens of nuclear weapons within a month. The current agreement does not allow them to press the button. It allows them, it in fact encourages them, if you will, to build that machine. Now, their goal though is to build that machine and legitimately, and then they just have a month of breakout and they'll wait for an opportune moment, press the button. So the fact that right now they're not building a one nuclear bomb is not good. It's bad because they're building a machine that'll turn them into a mega superpower. We cannot allow them to build that machine. And that's what President Trump did, and I certainly applaud him for that. It's the beginning. We have to force Iran to a very clear decision. Either you pursue your nuclear plan, or you have a viable economy. You can't get both. Only if he's, there's those T streets that you can either turn right or left. No other way. And once he's confronted with either an economy or nuclear, they'll make the right decision because they don't want to kill themselves. So, thank you very much. Do I have time? I'll take a couple of questions. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Andrew Harrod. I'm a journalist working, among other projects, on a film concerning Palestinian persecution of Christians in the territories. I'm working with the Center for Near East Policy Research, and they've examined all of the Palestinian Authority textbooks used here in Jerusalem, for example, in numerous schools. And they have really very disturbing anti-Semitic content for Christian education, distorting the gospel message, the New Testament, to really revive anti-Semitic themes of Jews as Christ killers, and also in the Torah, Tanakh, the Old Testament, that they're complete admissions of Jews, that there's just simply presentations of the people who received the Ten Commandments. Why have you, as Minister of Education, not done anything to say, confiscate these books from schools under your control?
So here's what we do vis-a-vis textbooks in Eastern Jerusalem. First of all, the Eastern Jerusalem textbooks go through an adaptation where we take out that sort of stuff. But we're going a step forward. We are, again, not forcing, but allowing and incentivizing East Jerusalem schools that choose the Israeli curriculum, and then they can get Israeli matriculation tests and then get good jobs, because East Jerusalem is part of Israel. So I'm using a bit of a stick and a lot of carrot here. I know it sometimes is enticing. Let's go, fight. But you can't force someone to learn what you want him to learn. That's something you can't do. You can prevent someone from doing bad stuff. But I ultimately want them to study our curriculum and go get good jobs. So we're on it. I'm aware of it. This is only in relation to East Jerusalem. In Judea and Samaria, in the PA, they are studying from those books. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Hi, good to see you, Mr. Minister. The Security Cabinet decision yesterday, which you sat in on, that I think it's an 8-point points for renewing negotiations with the Palestinians. I want to ask, the Hamas, Fatah, have gone down this attempt to unity many times before. Do you think this time is serious? And given the events of recent months where there have been blackouts in Gaza, why did the two sides come together this time, and will it last?
The short answer is I don't know. I don't know, but no, I don't know whether it'll last. But I would say, to answer your question, why has this come about? A few things. First of all, the current Hamas leadership in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, primarily Yahya Sinwar, who's a murderer. He with his own hands, he murdered people. He seems to be a cool-headed guy who is focused on his goals. And here's what they want. What they want is what I call the Hezbollah Lebanese model, which is they want to be a terror group, but they want to enjoy all the fruit of being legitimized or differentiated by the Palestinian Authority. In Lebanon, here's what's going on. And here's one ask that I do have from you. I'll talk about Lebanon, and then here's what's going on in Lebanon. We've got Hezbollah with 130,000 rockets. They are part and parcel of the Lebanese government. Yet the international community says, well, Lebanon is Lebanon, Hezbollah is Hezbollah. No. Lebanon is Hezbollah, Hezbollah is Lebanon. Now, why is this important? I want to make, this is one specific ask that I have. I haven't asked anything, but I do. We are concerned with Lebanon because I believe it's almost the biggest concentration of rockets on a small territory, perhaps beyond North Korea, on Seoul, in the world. And while I very much hope and I'm working towards not having another conflict, it's not a crazy notion to think that we might have a third Lebanon war. In the event that it happens, what happened last time around is President Bush asked Olmert, he said something along the lines of, all right, Hezbollah, you go get them. Don't touch Lebanon, though. Now, I want to tell you a story. I told you before I was in the Second Lebanon War. My job was to hunt down missile launchers. I did that for 20 years. I'm really good at it. If you ever need one at home, call me. So now I can tell you after 20 years, there is no way to take tweezers and pull them out of missile launchers out of building. It doesn't exist. You've got tens of thousands of missile launchers embedded within homes. There's a kitchen, living room, missile launcher room, very natural. If someone harbors a missile launcher in his home, that home is not a home. It's a terror camp. It's a terror facility. And Lebanon, in essence, has turned into a terror nation. And we cannot have next time that impossible mission. You go hit Hezbollah, don't touch Lebanon. No, 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 no. Because if, the Prime Minister said, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, fly, it's a duck. If Lebanon has Hezbollah as part of government, it's harboring thousands and thousands of missile launchers in its homes, then Lebanon is game. It's infrastructure, the international airport, the government facilities, it's all game. Because if you don't want that to happen, it doesn't need to happen. Just dismantle this thing called Hezbollah. So that my ask from you is to understand Hezbollah equals Lebanon and not ask us to do the impossible feat of tweezering out terrorists from supposedly a great peace-loving nation. Now, back to Hamas. This is exactly what Hamas wants down in Gaza. They want to have that same model. Yesterday we said no. We said no. I am not against negotiations, by the way. I sat in the previous government. We negotiated with the PA. I don't think there's going to be that's the land for peace approach. You know my approach. And I think ultimately Israel and much of the world will come to understand that the way to achieve peace is by strengthening Israel, by retaining our Jewish land, and by having a strong IDF here. And ultimately, our enemies will realize that you just can't. And it might take 10 years, it might take 50 years. You guys read Bible, it always said, and then there was peace for 40 years. All right, so So that's essentially what we said yesterday. I'm being told that I'm going to turn into a pumpkin in 1 minute. So I just want to leave you with one thought that when I grew up also, you probably remember, there was an American TV show called The Time Tunnel. Do you remember that? With Tony and Doug? You remember? They flying. So imagine there was a time machine that you can be thrown back into history, and we press it right where we are right now, over here, say 3,000 years ago. So we'd be able to see this guy called King David. He would be speaking the same Hebrew that we speak. We'd be able to communicate with him. It would take a few minutes of adjustment of probably but it's the same words, same precise language. We're direct descendants of David. My son is called David. My 4 kids, Jonathan, Michal, Abigail, and David. There's a theme here. By the way, we're 3 brothers, Asher, Dan, and Naphtali. My dad, may rest in peace, Jim, his Hebrew name is Jacob, and my mom, Leah. So it works. and I just think it's remarkable that we've renewed the Jewish state here. This is our 3rd time. We're not going to get another chance, so we can't blow it this time. We need to keep it here forever and ever. So thank you very much. Toda rabba.
Okay. Just one second. Can I use this opportunity to ask you, Minister Bennett, the last question is, in this room, there is a people that represent more than 1 billion Christian Zionists. How, as you, as a Minister of Education and Diaspora, you think that we can use them more in terms of supporting Israel?
First of all, again, I want to tell you that your support is huge and it's felt, and we don't take it for granted. What we need is for each and every one of your readers, your supporters, to speak up on campus, speak up, because there's so much distortion and lies going out there about Israel. You've probably heard people who said exactly the opposite of what I said, and that's the beauty of Israel. We're a democracy. We're a democracy. And think of Jews arguing, it's crazy. So ultimately, that's we've never asked anyone to fight our wars. We've never asked America to send one soldier to fight. We can defend ourselves. We need that backing and to speak up. And we're not perfect, but we try to be as good as we can, and we are good. We're a force of good on this in this world. So that's my one ask. Always speak up, even when it's very unpopular. That's exactly when we need you. When we're fighting in Gaza, and God forbid civilians get killed, we don't seek that. But the context is we're fighting evil, and they're trying to annihilate us, and they're using kids as shields to put things in context of what's going on here. And there's one Jewish nation of just 6.5 million Jews, 1.5 million Arabs in the small state, surrounded by hundreds of millions of radical Islamists that want to annihilate us and you. And we're here, the forefront of the battle between the free world and radical Islam. We're the boots on the ground. Everyone talks about, we're here. My kids, we're all here and thriving. Back us. Toda Rabba. Thank you.